All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Travel Days 2020, presented by the Italian National Tourist Board. I'm Huntley Mitchell, editor of Travel Weekly, and before we kick off proceedings, I want to let you know about a few house rules. You should be able to see the chat function on the right-hand side of your screen. Feel free to use this to communicate with your fellow attendees during each session. However, our moderator will boot out anyone who uses it inappropriately. So one strike and you're out. We'll also be taking a few questions at the end of the session, if there are any. So if there's something you want answered, please submit your question via the Q&A function, which is also located on the right-hand side of your screen. If you do decide to share anything Travel Days related on social media, make sure you include the hashtags Travel Days and Travel Days 2020. We'll also be sharing a simple feedback poll at the end of the session, so please let us know what you think before you leave. Now, I'd like to introduce our speaker for this session. Phillipa Harrison is the Managing Director of Tourism Australia, and she joins us live from the organisation's head office in Sydney. Welcome, Pip, and thank you very much for taking the time to share your wisdom at Travel Days 2020.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
Excellent. So, as you will all know, this year Australian tourism has faced its most challenging period ever, first with the devastating summer bushfires, and then with the shutdown of travel globally due to COVID-19. But as green shoots emerge with travel restrictions easing, a domestic-led recovery will mark the steps towards rebuilding a sustainable and profitable future for Australian tourism. So Pip's going to share with us today some initiatives and strategies to ensure Australia is well positioned for when travel moves beyond the current crises. So Pip, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Hi everybody, it's great to be here on Travel Days 2020. It's unfortunate we can't be face to face, but I think this is the next best thing. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on whose land we're meeting today. For me, that's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and also extend that respect to any other Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders who may be present today. So, without question, 2020 has been quite the year for many communities around the globe, but there's no doubt that tourism has been one of the worst affected segments. We were affected first, particularly in Australia, with the worst bushfire season on record. And now with COVID-19 hitting our shores, it's been quite the year. So this morning I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how Tourism Australia has managed the first time in pretty much our history that we've been welcoming international travellers to our shore. What we're doing about that, and a little bit of a glimpse into how we see the future as well. So I'm expecting the presentation to come up on the screen at any moment, but I can't quite see that. There it is. Okay, fabulous. So I wanted to just start by just showing you where we were at the end of 2019. So our mission up until the beginning of this year was really just around working in international markets and those 15 markets around the world that present the best opportunity for Australian tourism. And our job is to create demand, quite simply, for international travellers to come to Australia, to invite the world to experience the Australian way of life. And tourism was going really well. We had record numbers. We had 9.5 million visitors to Australia. International visitation was contributing $45 billion to the Australian economy. And I think people don't realise what a big employer tourism is either. So 1 in 13 jobs were in tourism. And so then COVID hit, the bushfires and COVID hit. And, I think for us, it was around then focusing on where we could find visitation, because our job as a tourism agency is not only to create demand, but also to foster a sustainable future for the tourism industry and all of the industries that rely on it as well. So even though we hadn't been in domestic since 2013, we received some extra funding in January, on the 19th of January, and by the 23rd of January, we had launched a new campaign domestically called Holiday Here This Year. And the intent of that campaign was around getting Australians to travel in their own backyard, because at that point they could still travel offshore, and we were traveling offshore in droves. More people left Australia, more Australians left Australia than international visitors came to Australia. So 10 million of us went offshore seeking travel experiences last year. So in order to counter the downturn in international tourism from the bushfires, we did launch this domestic campaign. Then at the end of January, the Chinese outbound travel was stopped right at the peak of our visitation season from China, Chinese New Year. And then by March 20, the borders were closed altogether. So at that time, you know, we recalled everybody back from their holidays. We were meeting every single day. There was a lot of moving parts. We were working with our state and territory counterparts, and the industry and our board and our partners offshore, just trying to work out how to work our way through this crisis without sort of having any visibility on how it was going to unfold. So one of the things that we found was really useful in this time when we were making lots and lots of decisions was to really put a framework around what was right, what activity was the right activity for the moment, just to make sure that we get the tone and timing right, because that is really, really important. To launch a campaign into a market that is in lockdown, for example, is probably not the right spend of taxpayers' money for starters, but also the right message for consumers. So we came up with this stages of recovery model, and it was really around, you know, what do we do when we're in crisis? And we saw that there were 2 points in a crisis. There was when people were in panic and worrying about where their toilet paper was going to come from. And then once all of that had settled down, when they were locked down and had restricted movement, and started dreaming a little bit about what they might do when lockdown finishes. We thought then there was a recovery phase, which was around, you know, restrictions are starting to ease, there's rising optimism, and what activity is appropriate at that time. And then what is going to be the travel scene once all borders are open again. So what we did realize was that this is not linear. We're going to go backwards and forwards a little bit in this model, and we've seen that already. And also that different markets, and in fact in our case, even different states are in different stages at any one time. And so we've really started to tailor our messages by consumer sentiment. So we do a dip into market every 2 weeks domestically, just to see where consumers are at. But we're also tailoring all of our plans and all of our messages by market. So for example, we did just launch a new campaign a couple of weeks ago, but we had to hold back in Victoria. We also had to hold back in WA because neither of the people in those states could travel anywhere other than their own state. And in fact, in Victoria, it was, you know, as you all know, it was in lockdown. So this is just a little bit of a framework that we've been using, which has really just helped us navigate what is a really changeable, dynamic and volatile period of time. So I wanted to talk a little bit about international. I know my subject is about domestic-led recovery, but one thing I do want to emphasize is that international is really important. And from Tourism Australia's point of view, it's more important than ever, because we know that while visitation from international countries is going to be a little bit of a way off, it's really important that we don't go dark in those markets, that we keep focused on them, because the time to dream, plan and book a holiday to Australia is long. It's months, sometimes years. And while all of the airlines, tour operators, industry, and in some cases our state partners have really pulled back talking about Australia for obvious reasons, it's really important that we do keep the lights on and make sure that people are still thinking about an Australian holiday and planning an Australian holiday, more importantly. And, you know, we have found that demand for Australia is still really strong out there. When we speak to our partners, it is a little bit, you know, if anything, it's frustration. You know, they have demand, they have business, and they just want the borders to be open. We also do a long-term consumer study called the Consumer Demand Project, and every 6 months we dip into all of our markets around the world just to see how people are thinking about Australia and an Australian holiday, and just to see where we're ranking versus other countries around the world. We've just done that latest dip. And actually, the metrics for Australia are really doing quite well. So destinations with wide open spaces are feeling safer. We've always been perceived as a safe destination, but I think, A, we still are, but B, that's going to be much more important to people when they are traveling again. And the other thing is value for money is always something that's really important when people are choosing a holiday, and people are seeing Australia as more of a value for money destination, and people want to come here. So intention, desirability for Australia is rising, and so that really does put us in good stead when the borders do open again. Because one of the things that has always been a big barrier for us, there's a big three, we call them the time, distance and cost to get to Australia, has always been our largest barrier, because everybody wants to come to Australia. When we do our consumer demand study, Australia is always in the top 5 of places that people want to go and visit, but these barriers get in their way. An interesting thing that we've seen through this crisis is that those barriers, those things that were previously barriers, are actually somewhat becoming a bit of a driver, because we are a long way away. We have managed this thing well, and we do have, we're fairly sparsely populated compared to other countries around the world. And these things are going to be increasingly important as people look to start traveling again around the world. So what are we doing right now? I said we're not going dark. It's probably the opposite of not going dark. We're very, very busy, actually. So this is the body of work that we have at the moment, just making sure that we still have content out there, we're in the right channels, we're speaking in the right tone. So our PR teams have never been busier pitching stories and getting some really great take up, because people are looking for good news stories around the world, and we have a lot of them. So we're getting a lot of take up for that. Our marketing teams are pushing a lot of content out through our native channels. They're also planning for the grand reopening, and that is something that we have some pretty big plans for. Our Aussie specialist trainers are training more people than ever. So we have, it's an online learning module, but we also have 23 trainers based around the world that we employ in partnership with our state and territory partners. And every year they train on average about 32,000 people. Last year we did 80,000 training sessions, and that really is around people wanting to reach out, wanting to skill up while they have a bit of downtime. But it's a really positive sign to show that there is still a lot of demand for Australia out there. And we also are running our events. So we do a lot of events around Australia, connecting industry with our partners offshore. And the Australian marketplace is currently happening at the moment. We just wrapped the US last week. We've got the UK coming up, and we've got Japan and China following closely on from that. And those are really important sessions in terms of us just staying connected, making sure that our product is staying in our partners' brochures and that they're still focused on Australia. And then the other thing we've done is a bit of dreaming content. So we just did our 8D videos, which do need to be listened to with headphones on. But the idea around the 8D videos was just really making sure that people, again, keep dreaming and planning of an Australian holiday. So take a look at just the compilation video of the 8D. So they've been incredibly well received, and we are actually doing some more videos in different locations, so keep an eye out for those. So that's what we're doing in international markets, which is really our core. But at the moment, we really are fishing where the fish are and making sure that we keep a sustainable tourism industry going by focusing on a domestic-led recovery. And that really is around encouraging Australians to get out and experience Australia. And you would argue that now that we have a captive audience, that is something that is a little bit like shooting fish in a barrel, to use two fish analogies. But it actually isn't, and there's two reasons for that. One is that people have many different ways to spend their discretionary income. They could be renovating their house, and I can tell you there's not a lot of builders available at the moment. And also that they're buying cars. You know, car sales are actually up by around 20% in some brands. So we need to encourage people to still travel, and so that's what we're doing. The other part to that is we need to encourage people to travel differently. So typically Australians will have and this is a generalization, but typically they will have a beach holiday here and then save their big experiential holiday for offshore holiday. So what we're trying to do is get Australians to do something a little bit different, to get out and use and experience some of our unique experiences that we're so well known and loved for in international markets, and maybe to go somewhere that they haven't considered going to before. So that's the objective in a nutshell of the next iteration of our campaign. And I said before, we do a little bit of consumer confidence research every couple of weeks, and you can see that the consumer confidence pretty much, it does seem to reflect where we are in terms of cases. So we did actually halt holiday here this year when coronavirus was in its peak, because it just wasn't the right time to be out with a campaign asking people to travel and book. But now we're at a point where lead indicators are trending up, and actually we're above where we were prior to the second wave in Victoria. So we believe that now is the time is right to start encouraging Australians to travel for the summer period and beyond. And we know that there are a lot of Australians who are keen. So 54% of the people we surveyed say that they want to go on holiday and they want to go in the next 6 months or so. And that's really important for them because they are really looking to reconnect with family and friends after long periods apart, and a holiday is a great way to do that. So the messaging that we have is a little bit about mutual recovery. You know, you will be helping out an industry that's so important to Australia, but it'll be a great break for you after a really tough year. So in terms of talking about the right message for the right time, as I said, we were at holiday here this year in January, which was really around getting people to plan and book an Australian holiday rather than going offshore. We really shut down at the end of March because the crisis was in full force. When we sensed there was a bit of rising optimism, things were starting to look a bit freer, people were starting to dream and plan again. We launched a lot of dreaming content, and that's when we did There's Nothing Like Australia. We did the whole Live from Oz program, which was 34 activations around Australia over a weekend. I'm just showing people some of the different experiences and trying to provide a little bit of inspiration. And now that movement is freeing up, we are going back again with holiday here this year, but with the slightly different focus of encouraging people to do something different. So this is quite a busy slide, but it just shows you the breadth of the activity that we're doing. So the Plan Your Trip is really around enlisting those well-loved Australians, Hamish Blake and his wife, Zoe Foster Blake, and getting people to plan their trip, and that is the big kind of above the line campaign. But then we have a whole range of other activities underneath that, which are around bringing the breadth of experiences to life through multiple different channels that we utilize. And we're also going to then focus in on targeted activations, which are a little bit about the how and why of what they can do. So you can see there that we've got city escapes as the next cab off the rank. And the reason for that is cities are really hurting. So regions, there is some patchy recovery in the regions, typically those that are within sort of 2 to 5 hours driving from a major capital city. Some of them are doing really well, in fact, better than they've ever done. And that's awesome, but it is covering up the fact that there still is a lot of pain out there. And particularly in the cities. So the cities don't have any corporate business at the moment, but they also used to enjoy the lion's share of international visitation. So encouraging people, when it's safe, and that's an important caveat, when it's safe to go back into the cities is something that we're going to focus on, as well as the icons. So, you know, the Great Barrier Reef, Uluru, Northern Australia in the summer period, which is typically its off season. All of those are areas of need that we are going to focus on over the coming weeks and months, and then back that up with industry support, but also our partnership and distribution activity. So we've always been very focused on partnerships at Tourism Australia. We don't sell anything, and it's a great way to convert the business of the demand that we create. So we are in partnership at the moment. We've got about 11 out there right now. We've got a whole range rolling out through the year, and that is travel agency networks, but also other sort of tour operators and large networks that have access to big audiences and where we can try and convert some of that business. We're working really closely with the states. The last thing we want to do is to be falling over each other. So it's really important that we're aligned on our messaging. So there's lots of alignment and conversations going on there about how we work together. And then there's this third bucket, which is around encouraging other partners who want to participate in the campaign to get involved and enjoy, I guess, the halo effects of the campaign. So anyone in the tourism industry can go in, download this campaign toolkit and use it. And it's we had about 3,000 companies do it last time, and we've just updated the toolkit, so that's there and available if anybody would like to utilize it. So in terms of what we're doing with travel agents, so the Aussie Specialist Program, which has never been in Australia before, was rolled out in May, and we've really seen a great uptake in it. So we've got 1,800 agents now qualified, which is great. And we're talking a lot about, just some of the experiences that you can do there. But the thing with the Aussie Specialist Program is it isn't just online training modules. There is a lot more there. You can do some virtual familials. We've got Ricky Dunn, who was an Aussie Specialist trainer in the UK and in the US as well. He's traveling around Australia and doing little mini familials and talking to operators, and that's a little series called On the Road in Oz, which is coming out every single Friday. It's just a little 10-minute vignette. But we are also looking to encourage consumers to book through a travel agent as well, because we know that travel agencies are hurting right now and need to pivot to a much more to a domestic focus. But we also know that if you book through a travel agent, and I was a travel agent myself back in the day, that people go to more unusual places, they spend longer, they do more. So it's a really mutual benefit. So we're saying go to oz.com for inspiration or go to your travel agent. And so that's just an example of some of the creative that's coming out at the moment. So that's I think I've talked a little bit already about the intent of the campaign. It's really around getting Australians to travel in Australia like they do elsewhere. This is the new tagline, just a bit of the inspiration and aspiration that we're trying to show, that it's more than just beautiful beaches, although beautiful beaches do feature. And this is the 3 steps of our latest campaign. So we started with a teaser, which had a very well-known voiceover. Hamish did a voiceover, and we started that on the 9th of October. We launched the Hamish and Zoe TVC on the 13th, and now we're rolling out the campaign. So I'm just going to show you the teaser that came out just before we launched the campaign.
Australia. Whoever came up with this place deserves a real pat on the back. I mean, think about it. There are birds who can laugh, mammals who can sing, waterfalls that can fall both ways, and 126 different shops that all reckon they sell the world's best pie. There are walls that can tell stories, cities that start where the waves end, and there's a lot of nothing, which is actually really something. You've got rivers that can wash your worries away, bush that knows how to bounce back. I heard about places where you can fly, kayak or wade to lunch and get served a delicious beverage by a guy called Jeff. I mean, I don't know if that's his actual name, but gee, that sounds like a pretty incredible day. This is a place that took a look at the rulebook and said, nah, here's a platypus. You know the most incredible thing of all? A holiday here this year is exactly what this place and all of us needs. So get out there. For Australia.
It was really interesting. You know, I talked a little bit at the top of the hour about the importance of tone and timing. We launched this video on the 9th of October, and over that weekend in Victoria, we got a little bit of chin music around, you know, yeah, of course, I'd love to go out, but I can't, I'm in lockdown. And there was just a bit of negativity around the launch of that. And we actually had a media plan ready to go to launch the second part of the campaign in Victoria, but we halted that because we realized that the consumers just weren't there. They were, you know, there was a lot of news at that time around the lockdown. There was a lot of disparate opinions on it. And so it just wasn't the right time. And I think that is just such a good example of how we need to be really careful and really listen to what consumers are saying at any moment in time, because consumer sentiment at the moment is so volatile. So we did pause our campaign. I'm really glad that we did because it wouldn't have been right. And we are just now looking, now that the restrictions are starting to ease in Victoria, we feel like it is the time to launch the campaign over the coming weeks. So we will be doing that shortly. But for the rest of the states, we did launch the teaser, and you know we use a lot of well-known Australians at Tourism Australia because it's a great way to get people to quickly recognise and buy into your messages. And so we love Hamish and Zoe. They're just great. They really resonate with the messaging that we want to get across. They are really down to earth and really excited about being called to arms, as they said, to help Australia in its recovery. So take a look at the campaign. Just going to hope somebody is going to play the video for me just now.
So, I need a holiday.
Do you?
Yeah, for Australia.
What about the outback?
Yes, yes.
We could catch our own lunch.
I know exactly what you mean. Oh, honey, I could teach the kids to surf.
You don't know how to surf.
Yeah, I mean, obviously someone would teach me and then I would pass on the wisdom to them. You know what? Maybe, we have a fancy night in, you know, for Australia.
I think I'm ready for a night out.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, we're going out.
We should just go somewhere we've always wanted to go.
Yes. I think we're doing this.
Plan a holiday here this year for Australia.
Hey, what are you doing?
Oh, I just thought we might pack a bit lighter, you know, for Australia.
No.
No, actually, I think we'll pack heavy. Oh, what are these doing on the floor?
So we filmed that the day before they went into hard lockdown, so we just got in. And as soon as they are out of lockdown again, because they have been this whole time, we will be doing other chapters and getting them to travel around Australia and share their experiences. So they're signed up with us for a 12-month period, which is really, really exciting. And then the other thing we've been doing is just having a lot of, putting a lot of print and outdoor out there, just again, with a very experiential focus and a bit of a mutual recovery focus. And we're using social media to really try and talk a little bit about the depth and breadth of the experiences that are out there and bringing destinations to life. And that's really where our state and territory partners come in as well, because they are very involved in this process as well. Oh, there's the TBC. Okay. So what's next? So at the moment, we are looking also at the future. So we had come to the end of 2020. We had the Tourism 2020 goals. Gosh, could anyone have foreseen where we ended up this year? Anyway, and we were looking very hard at 2030. I think now we have to look at the next 10 years in two phases. One is the recovery period, and what are we going to do over that period of time? And that's going to be a little bit more opportunistic, if you'd like, and just being active where there is opportunity. And then what does the long term look like? And we are working on a project at the moment called Tourism Futures, funnily enough, and we will be sharing the outputs of that. And it's going to be a dynamic model that is going to be able to change over time, because one thing we do know is that we just don't know what's coming up next. And so we need to have a bit of a dynamic way of looking at the future. So that is well underway at the moment. But in the meantime, we do have a lot of access to a lot of off-the-shelf research that's out there at the moment. And we're just seeing there's quite a few. This is a bit of a periodic table, and you're not meant to be able to read it all. But what it is illustrating is that there are so many different and movable consumer sentiments out there at the moment, but some big themes emerging. And what we're trying to work through at the moment is what is a sticky change, like what is going to be here for the long term, and what is just of a moment. And we think that there's a bit of both in there, but we do know for sure that that a crisis does accelerate a trend. And there are two trends that we do think are here to stay. And that is, one is telling our Indigenous story. It is such an opportunity globally. So prior to the lockdown, probably about 20% of people who came to Australia had an Indigenous experience, and that was growing by about 6% every year. And part of that is accessibility to some great, authentic new products that are out there. But we really are committed at Tourism Australia to telling our incredible Indigenous story and celebrating that rich history, and the fact that we are part of the oldest living culture on earth. I mean, it's just an incredible proposition. And so we are looking at how we ramp that up over the next period of time. And the other trend that has just been incredibly important, is going to be important going forward, but has becoming more and more important to travellers, is leaving a light footprint when you travel. And so this is about our sustainability. I just got a lot of feedback there. Okay. I don't know what happened there. Okay, I might just click on from that. Okay. So, hi Hunter, I think we've got a bit of feedback there. Okay. She just dropped out.
All right, so we've just temporarily lost Pip, but hopefully we get her back in a second. But I hope all of you enjoyed that presentation. I certainly did, and got plenty of insights and valuable information. Pip, we've got you back now. Sorry about that. But thank you so much for that presentation.
The wonders of technology.
I know, great when it works and terrible when it doesn't. Yeah, you provided some valuable insights there into how Tourism Australia has been working to help in the recovery of the industry. I wanted to open the session up to questions that both we've received from attendees, and also I had a couple of questions. So the first one I wanted to start with was the 8D videos. They're fabulous. How can attendees access them? Are they available through the Aussie Specialist program somehow, or the Tourism Australia website?
Hello.
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, hi. Sorry.
Hey.
Okay, awesome. So just wanted to ask, those 8D videos, how can people access those?
They're available on our website. I will double check that they're in our image library, but let me follow up on that one, but they are on our website.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah, and I think they're on YouTube. They're on our YouTube, actually. They're on our YouTube channel, so I'm pretty sure you can link to those.
Excellent, okay.
Yeah.
Beauty. A question I wanted to ask, in terms of consumer segmentation, do you think it's going to become ever more important now as a result of the pandemic? Has it heightened the difference in terms of the types of travellers now?
We've always focused on what we call the high value traveller, and that's not necessarily a high net worth individual. It's actually somebody who has a high propensity to travel, and when they travel for longer. They spend a lot of their discretionary income on travel, and so that focus isn't going to go away. Actually, there's two parts to that answer. In the recovery period that I just talked about, we're going to be a lot more open, so I think we're going to be wherever there is an opportunity. But in the longer term, we will go back to focusing on the high value traveller.
Okay. And have there been any destinations that Tourism Australia has been keeping an eye on throughout this pandemic in terms of how they've handled the recovery and taken some tips from, and perhaps some tips on what not to do as well?
I think there's a few what not to do's out there. I probably won't name and shame them. Look, I think this is I'm going to have to use the word unprecedented, and so everybody is a little bit sort of trying to work out what they do at the moment. And I think we're sort of working together. Actually, I speak to Tourism New Zealand a lot. I think Japan are doing a good job in terms of stimulating their domestic market. It's interesting because the countries that did try and keep tourism open, and there was particularly in the north, lots of summer holidays going on. They're now in the midst of a second wave. So I think we can all learn lessons from each other over this period, and we certainly are. I think this is not the time for competition. It's the time to work together and jointly solve this one.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a question from another attendee. They're kind of talking about the importance of getting internationals here to Australia, and their view is that in order to get them here, we also need to get locals to travel overseas. So I guess their question is to you that can we count on Tourism Australia to lean on the powers that be to open outbound travel at all?
It's a very good question. I wish I had that sort of influence. The international borders are being managed with a health first perspective. And so, I think as and when things change, or as we learn about things that are happening around the world that might help, we do feed those through to government. But I think, I think this thing just has to go through a process, and you can only see that way we're handling it versus other countries around the world that, we are in a good spot. So look, I think you know, no one's keener than me to get the borders open both ways. But I just think we have to go through a health process to get there.
Yeah, okay. We've got another question come in from an attendee. What do you think is the biggest hurdle in getting Australians to experience Australia the same way they would have experienced international destinations?
I think there's two things. There's a logistical one, which is borders open, and I think that's really important. But I do think we have an opportunity of a generation almost, because there's a real braggability and a real trend with Australians to travel offshore. And I think if we can show people just the amazing things that there are to do, see and do here. So I think part of it is a bit of an education process as well, that we might actually, you know, change the way that people do travel a little bit. I don't think we'll ever stop people going offshore. We are a nation of travellers. But I think we can show people that you can have an incredible experience here too. And I think we have really open ears with the Australian consumers at the moment for that. So for me, it's about getting the experiences out there and showcasing them and all of the different things that we can see and do around Australia.
Sure. Got another question from another one of our attendees. I'm loving these. From your sentiment tracking, have you seen any changes in attitude between the different age groups for travelling around Australia in 2021?
I'm not sure of the nuance between age groups. I know that there is a huge amount of pent-up demand out there. You know, the older travellers actually who have the means to travel are still keen to travel and still keen to get out there. They just want to be a bit more socially distanced. But we are finding that the two groups that really want to travel are young families and older people as well, older grey nomads, if you like.
Okay. Look, I think that's all the attendee questions we've got at the moment, but I'm going to ask you one more question. What lessons have you learned as a leader throughout not just COVID, but also the bushfires as well at the start of the year?
Yeah, I think for me, it's about making quick, imperfect decisions. So don't dilly-dally, make a decision. If it's wrong, change it. So I think quick decision-making is important in being reactive. But also then acknowledging if it's the wrong course and changing as things change again. But the other thing is communication. I think that we have really upped our communication at Tourism Australia to our industry partners offshore, our industry here, our board, everybody, and it's been really well received. So I think you can't over-communicate in a crisis would be the other thing that I would say.
Okay. Some good tips right there. Look, we've had a couple more attendee questions come through. I'll just keep firing away if that's all right with you. Do you think some states have upset potential tourists from lockdown states by keeping their borders closed? I guess making them feel like perhaps that they're a little unwanted.
Yeah, as one of those states, I think there is a little bit of that. I don't think it's going to stop people travelling, no. I think it's just probably more frustration than anything. You know, I think people see it for what it is and are keen to get out there. So I don't think it's going to be a barrier to travelling, no.
Yeah, okay. And we've got another one here. The cost of travelling in Australia seems more expensive than overseas, like Bali, for example. This person, Jared Levy, says other countries like China give away activity and activity vouchers. Do you have any plan like that to stimulate family domestic travel by the way of vouchers or other types of incentives?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of stimulus ideas being discussed. Some of the states have done it, and they've done it really well. I think for us, we're not seeing an issue in demand. I think what we're seeing is actually just barriers to travel. So I'm not sure that we'd be solving the right problem if we did a stimulus in that way. But I mean, acknowledge that it is more expensive to travel in Australia than it is elsewhere. But I guess that's just part of what we sign up to in terms of having minimum wage and all of those good things that make it a great place to live. But It is a factor, and the reality is that, you know, some people are underemployed or unemployed at the moment, and we need to be sensitive to that. And you know, that's why we always say, if you can travel, here's some ideas for you.
Okay. The questions keep rolling in. We've got another one. This is an agent-focused question. You were talking about Indigenous experience and the fact that they're going to be very important going forward. But as an agent, this attendee is saying it's quite hard to link with them on a commission basis. So what would you suggest, and how can agents connect better with them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We actually do have a signature collective called Discover Aboriginal Australia, and that is a collective of experiences that are commissionable and are available for travel agents to book. But it is a bit of a process to go through, because some are trade ready and some aren't, and I think that's just part of the journey. But yep. I mean, I would say check out Discover Aboriginal Experiences, our signature collective.
Okay, awesome. And just on Indigenous experiences, we have another attendee asking a question to do with that. When you were talking about Indigenous and sustainability as focus for future engagement, are you able to provide some examples of strategies that you're undertaking to engage in local providers to foster these pathways?
Sorry, what do you mean by that? Are you talking about the supply side?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so our sustainability strategy is underway at the moment, and it's really going to focus on advocacy and education rather than the supply side things. So Tourism Australia, we're a demand agency. We work with Austrade, who are supply side, and they look at those kind of issues. Where our focus will likely be is in telling those sustainable stories to our global audiences and providing education on best practice for people.
Okay. We've got another question here. I think this could be our last question, and then we might have to leave it there. But can Australian tourism, what other ways can Australian tourism encourage the public to use travel agents to book instead of going online and direct? I know that chatting to travel agents myself, that's a bit of a worry for them, suppliers undercutting them by going direct. So what's your advice and tips, first of all, for what should suppliers be doing better to, I guess, incentivize consumers to book via an agent, and also for agents to make them feel, you know, or put them front of mind with?
Yeah. I mean, that's why we're calling out travel agents in this latest campaign on some of our print and social, because we actually think that travel agents are a really important part of the mix. You know, offshore they always have been, and so now that we're focused in domestic, we really want to bring agents in. And I think where agents really come to the fore is in those longer, more complex itineraries. And I think that is, you know, so that those are the kind of things that we are trying to showcase and get people doing. So rather than just a beach holiday, which potentially people do book direct, although not always, you know, showcasing those different and interesting experiences, and just showing that when they're with a travel agent that they're well looked after. And so we have a bit of content coming up as well, talking about the benefits of booking through an agent. So, you know, always open to suggestions as well. So if there's anything else that, you know, we could be doing to help in that endeavour, really open to hearing it.
Okay, awesome. Well, Pip, thank you so much again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat today. I know you're under the pump quite a bit at the moment. It's
my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to everybody.
No problem. And thanks also to all of you who tuned in today. We hope you gained some valuable information and advice that you can hopefully apply to your own business recovery. But reminder, there are more sessions on this week, and please tune into all of those too. But for now, it's goodbye. So thank you.